You're listening to Energy Amplified. I'm your host, Marlisa McLaughlin, on greeninkradio.com. Thanks for joining me.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Energy Amplified. This is episode 6, part 1 of a series of episodes with award-winning best-selling author Penney Peirce. Penney has published 10 books, and her titles include Dream Dictionary for Dummies and Be the Dreamer, Not the Dream, A Guide to 24-Hour Consciousness. Her transformation trilogy includes The Intuitive Way, The Definitive Guide to Increasing Your Awareness, Frequency, The Power of Personal Vibration, and Leap of Perception, The Transforming Power of Your Attention. She's just recently added a 4th book to that series. Her latest publication arrives with impeccable timing, entering an awakening population seeking leadership and guidance along their own personal paths. Her book is called Transparency, Seeing Through the Expanded Human Capacity, and it's well on its way to transforming and expanding bookstores everywhere. You'll find a treasure trove of information and inspiration at penneypeirce.com. That's PENNEYPEIRCE.com. Please join me in welcoming well-respected international expert on intuition and perception, gifted clairvoyant, empath, and visionary, our own dynamic thought leader in the guidance of personal and societal transformation, the lovely Penney Peirce. Welcome, Penney, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm really good.
Awesome. Perfect timing. So your career spans over 4 decades, and just from reading the first page of one of your books, I found myself grabbing my highlighter, and then I just threw that aside and took a pencil and a pad because I didn't want to ruin the book. And I just wanted to highlight like every single sentence because you have such a profound way of just getting down to the bare bones of really elaborate, complex concepts. And I wanted to hail you first for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've worked around the world as a coach and a trainer for business and government leaders. You've worked with psychologists, scientists, celebrities, and those on a spiritual path since 1977. So I'm wanting to ask you first and foremost to talk about the climate, your personal climate, and what was going on for you before that career journey began.
Yeah. Well, I started off going into design, and first interior design, and did that for quite a while, and then went into, actually that kind of morphed into lighting design, which was interesting, and then graphic design. So I did a lot of problem solving, and I think it was good training for keeping the intuition open and learning to work with symbols, for instance, doing logos for people, things like that. And that sort of coincided with me moving to Northern California. I had been in New York and then Southern California at Cal Arts, which was Disney's kind of dream school, and then went up to San Francisco and was there for a long, long, long time. So somehow getting up to Northern California, this was right at the beginning of when all the consciousness movement was really opening up. And it was the perfect timing. And I still didn't know I had any intuitive abilities, really. I was curious about mysteries and I was reading a lot and stuff, but suddenly they had classes on everything in Marin County, and it was, I did everything, Tai Chi and yoga and meditation. And then they had clairvoyance development classes. And I thought, whoa, this sounds really interesting, and so I did it and I was really good at it. And that just became a kind of an all-consuming interest. And then I got laid off from my job. The company got bought out by another company. And there I was with a freelance business. And I started working more with the metaphysics and kind of morphed over from the graphics to just plain teaching and working with clients. So it all was very, very gradual. Everything opened. It was not a big dramatic thing for me. It was a very gradual unfolding, and it still is. Every year new things come in, just like the books. I always said it was like planes waiting to land. They're just stacked up out there. You get to a certain frequency, and the next one comes in.
Right. Well, and it's interesting now you're mentioning the word frequency, because how I found you was just searching through when I was doing some research for my own work. And the book Frequency came to me when I Googled for what I was researching. I had no idea what I was about to expand into and leap up from. I got to talk to you. And I'm so appreciative that we're having this conversation, because when I saw this incredibly vast amount of work, I'm thinking to myself, I hope she'll have time for this right now. Because you're just about to take a big trip.
Yeah.
Want to talk about that a little bit?
Since I've moved to Florida, I've been here a few years now, I've been working more in Europe. Before that, I was working a lot in Japan from the West Coast, but I've been working in Norway and Amsterdam and now Denmark. So last year we did a really huge training on intuition, and it was all women and all therapists mainly, which was interesting. So then they wanted more specific information on counseling and therapy. So this year we're going to do kind of intuition and energy dynamics for counselors and helping professionals. I'm sort of interested in how the new perception that we're starting to move into is going to affect the healing process. So this will be partly, I think, some research for me as well, as maybe the next book may be about that. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's wonderful, because that's the climate that I work in. I work in the healing part of the journey here, and trying to help others and being healed as I'm helping healings. And that's a wonderful synchronistic vibration to share. And that's another thing I love about what you offer, because all of your work talks about transformation and personal power. And that's what I really love about the healing process, is getting the person back into the fact that the power is within, and the healing transformation roots from there.
Yeah, I mean, everything is really about perception. That's what it came down to. The longer I went on at this, the more it came down to that it's how we perceive reality. And that's why Leap of Perception is the book I talk about this in, mainly, of moving out of linear perception into spherical and holographic perception, which is all in the present moment. There's no more linear past, present, future. It's all encompassed in the present moment, and that changes the way reality functions.
And our technology actually reflects that now too, right? With holograms and, things in a more three-dimensional way instantly.
Yes, but it's still very linear.
Yes.
I guess we're getting quantum computers or something, but I think that the brain is the magical thing that can, because it is very holographic. The brain itself, each part contains every other part. If you take one piece of the visual cortex out, it still sees the whole thing. It's totally holographic in the way it functions. And so I think we're built to make this shift. And I call it having inner geometries. We have sort of these ingrained ways that we see life working, and the linear way is like, past, present, future, cause and effect, this and that. And there's always like a thing and then a goal over here, and there's an empty space between. Into mind, it's like jumping over to these points along a line. And that makes us think that there's empty space, which slows everything down, because you have to cross the empty space to get to the next thing, and that what makes our consciousness so dense right now. So as you move it all into the present moment, and there really are no gaps anymore, you think of something and there you have it. When you think of it, you have it. It's instant. Now we just have to educate the body that when you think of it, it can flow through and start to materialize out of the field around you. The field will pattern itself into that inner blueprint very quickly now. Because
the practical application, like what you would say to someone who thinks very linearly and doesn't quite, for the layman, grasp, how do you do that? Like a lot of people, I think, will fall into a procrastination zone in that space you were talking about. And it's very hard because they can't get out of the linear thinking. Could you offer us some advice?
Well, I mean, it's like several books written about how to do this, right? So, but I think it has to do with centering, coming into the present moment and coming into the body, and then imagining a sphere around yourself, and that you are in the middle of a huge ball of reality. And that ball can change shape. It can change size and scope. And if you make it small, you're focusing in on the physical realm, like a task. If you let it get really huge, maybe you're meditating or dreaming, and you're out at a very high frequency, encompassing a lot of time and space, right? And so that ball is always encompasses everything, but it's an imaginary boundary, really. There's no outside world beyond the ball, because as soon as you think of it, the ball has already expanded to encompass that. So you never can get out of the ball. And so everything's always in the present with you. And you have to imagine that and feel it. you have to start feeling it and realizing that the past and the future are really not out there. They're different frequencies of consciousness, right? So you don't have a future anymore. You have potential realities. And there are many of them in the field with you, in the ball with you. And as soon as you place your attention on one of them, it starts to come forward toward you. And as you merge with it and feel it and imagine it and get your body involved so it can feel it, well, it starts to occur. So the smoother that process is of bringing attention to an imaginal realm idea and merging with it totally, the faster the reality occurs. And vice versa. The more you take your attention out of a reality by getting bored with it or realizing it's not a part of my world anymore, I'm not interested in it, like an addiction. Like I'm not interested in eating sugar that much, it's not a big deal. And you can talk yourself out of the perception of having that as a reality that has control over you, right? Into something that you don't care about, and it will dissolve. It'll like vaporize, and you'll forget about it. You're like, was that me? Did I have that? Or like somebody told me about that? And you can really literally let old memories and stories dissolve back out into the field. And then you're free to be totally much more of yourself that you ever thought you could be,
What a beautiful thing. And it doesn't have to take a really long time to dissolve these.
No, because it's not linear. Taking time is the old linear reality.
So things can happen in an instant when you're present. As the breath, just like in the yoga practice where that's the first place to go is the breath, and that helps you get into the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, because you have a lot of offerings in the perception of dreams, and in some of your books cover that.
Yeah.
And when you're dreaming, your body is in a very, very relaxed state, and there's that disconnect. So talk about the sphere during dream state and what we can... 24-hour consciousness. I love the concept.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the sphere is operating day and night, right? And I think that we can divide up the unified field into zones if you want to, or, bodies or levels or whatever. So you have your physical level, and that's a frequency. And then the energy body or the astral body or the etheric body, whatever, is at a little higher frequency than that. And then let's say the emotional bodies are a little higher than that. And the mental is a little higher than that. And then you go out to the spiritual realms and the Akashic records and all of that. And the further out you get in frequency, the more collective consciousness occurs. And the more you think of yourself as the group mind. The tighter it gets and the smaller and more dense it is, the more individual. And so we're all of that. And we move in and out of it all the time. Even during the day, we daydream, we space out, and that's where we've gone out into a big part of the ball, and accessing higher knowledge. And then we come back in and apply it. But same thing at night. You go through, you may be running around in the emotional zone and processing out old fears, for instance, and having nightmares or having, you're in a muddy river flowing down on a raft or something, those symbolic dreams are often much more about the emotional body and zone sometimes, or the mental zone is more related, for instance, to the air element, right? So you might be in a vehicle, a plane or a jet or a rocket. If it's a rocket, you're going way out into the higher realms, right? These things are kind of literal, symbolic. They're symbolic of literal things is what I mean to say, So we're moving constantly and accessing knowledge in and out and in and out. It's just constantly moving like a zoom lens on a camera,
right.
So I don't see dreaming as any different than dreaming your day into, what you notice in a sequence, because I think we guide our own sequence of noticings,
Yeah, perhaps the body sleeping is a good way to kind of shut down all the physical stimulation that can interfere with us reaching the perceptions that are symbolic of what we want to process.
Right, and it shuts down the left brain.
Yeah, and you were talking about the left brain and the right brain, reptile brain.
Yeah, because, I think intuition, and sometimes I call intuition direct knowing, but it operates at different frequencies, through the body, the reptile brain, the midbrain, the upper neocortex, left and right brain. And it feels different and looks different at those levels, but it's still knowing, direct knowing. And so the body picks up an awful lot of information. I call it energy information. We're becoming very hypersensitive So the body itself pictures in the back of the neck in the old reptile brain. Yeah, it's the expansion contraction part of consciousness. And then if it goes up to the midbrain, this is where you have the senses, vision, voice, vibration, and smell. And you can have the inner senses, or the clairaudience or clairsentience, those non-physical versions of the senses. And those are in the midbrain. And then if you go up into the upper neocortex, then of course you have pattern recognition in the right brain. You have total immersion into a field of knowledge that is not differentiated. It's all at once. And it has no language. The right brain is direct impressionability. Whereas the left brain then is where the final place where everything ends up, where you describe it and you have language. You have definition, you have analytical thinking, logical thinking. And so the left brain likes to define things. And then once it's defined things, it doesn't like to change, right? So this is the rule now. And so what happens is we get too locked in to the left brain and even identify ourselves with the left brain. And that to me is ego. And the left brain doesn't want, it doesn't want anything really new or to shift. So it's not really in the present moment.
I was just thinking that it just takes you into linear thinking, and then that becomes a trap. So you come back to the present moment.
And you think that's the way reality is then. See, if you're so ingrained in the left brain, which is what our education system teaches us,
and
it's
the
validated.
That and
media. Yeah. I think that left brain really shuts down intuition. It's also not in the present moment at all, really. Anytime something happens, it refers back to an earlier, similar, some kind of decision it made about something before, and then applies that to the present situation. So you're never really in touch with the soul when you're in the left brain, because the soul is right in the moment and it has fresh new knowledge about what's appropriate. So that's why this new perception is so important, is that it's present moment. It allows the soul to be there, and you get to realize, hey, I am the soul. I don't have one. It's not like out there like a balloon, I'm it now. It's in my body. I'm making my body. I'm making my reality. I know what I'm doing at some level of myself because I'm connected to everything. And, unlimited source. And, you can create whatever you think about, really. And then your life
resource.
And then your life really changes when you make that shift of identity.
I was just thinking about that's your incredible empowering resource, is just being present with the perception that I am the soul, and this is what I create as I move in and around and about. There we go, linear, right away, right into in trying to describe it and sort of pin it down, it can go flat and linear very quickly.
Yes.
You have to be careful about that.
And that's the challenge of living today, is that we're starting to move out of the old perception, but a lot of people haven't even started yet to get out of it. That's why I call it the bridge time. We're sort of like all different levels of people's awareness right now. Some people are very clear. Others are getting there. Others are just starting. Others are fighting against it, and trying to maintain the old reality. And the challenge is to stay centered, stay in what I've called the home frequency, which to me, that's the soul in the body. It's the way you feel when you really are happy and like yourself and you're feeling clear and relaxed and, kind of frictionless. And, but we get knocked off center every time we go out in a crowd or get on the road, and deal with other drivers. And, it's just a constant, I wouldn't call it a struggle, but it's a practice. Maybe it's a spiritual practice, right? Where you just say, okay, get back home again, get back in yourself, remember who you are, and remember what I'm doing with my life here and how I like to be, and just get back into the feeling state.
And I do hear more and more of that around me. You just can hear the way people are languaging, how they're experiencing life. Mm-hmm. And I love the traffic image, because that's kind of where I started decades ago, is realizing that how I was experiencing people was reflected in traffic patterns, and that I had to back off and let go and, just watch and observe and get some information there so that I could realize where I was if I was out of my home frequency. Mm-hmm. It really gets you right centered rather rapidly.
Yes. And that's part 2 of the new perception, is that there's no outside world, because we think I end at my body and then everything is out there over there. And really, no, we're the whole field. So whatever is happening inside your mind is happening in your world, so you have a non-physical and physical reality at the same time. And so whatever's happening in the physical reality, you have a matching thought or pattern inside yourself, right? That's what you were saying. It reflects, or actually it doesn't even reflect, it is the same. And it's, I think, an important practice to do this kind of correlation work where you're always seeing how they are together, how they're alike.
And interactive. They're
yes, interactive.
And that makes it fun. That's what I'm missing in my life is more fun. I've been, I think pressing too hard in some aspects of my life just because of different circumstances that require your attention to be in a certain place. And I've been saying to myself, that's actually how it led me to you, is like, I want to begin to enjoy this transformational period that I'm entering. I mean, I feel like I'm constantly in a state, but when it comes and rushing in, you just want to feel alive to your fullest potential. I love to make that fun. That's why I love working with kids, because they're right there and they're ready to go, and you create a little energy ball. They don't know what you're doing, and you toss it to them and they catch it. Almost begin to see it. Like, that's fun. So the leap of perception, I love how when you say it slowly, leap of, you are anticipating faith, but a leap of perception is so much more powerful and transformative. The language of it is brilliant, and I love that. So thank you.
Good. Yeah, it may be one of the more important of the books that I've written, but Frequency is the most popular so far. But I think it's a little ahead of its time. It's starting to come in now, but it came out a little early maybe. But it's so important for people to understand how the perception is actually changing and what will happen as it does. And there are, I think in that book I outline some new attention skills that we're going to be really working with that are symptomatic of the new perception. So, I always try to write these sort of guidebooks in a way that introduce these concepts, but also give a lot of exercises and practical things people can do to feel it, because you've got to get it in your body. You can't just be up in your head thinking about it.
Well, let me give you a really quick synopsis of me experiencing what you've offered and I've received as a gift. So I went and got my hair done yesterday at my favorite place. It's a wonderful artist who is in his own home. And a friend of mine always joins me. So it's really like just visiting and we share. So yesterday I had the book with me, and while I was getting my hair done, my friend took the book and just was excited for me to be speaking with you and to be exploring this. And she came across a questionnaire in Frequency. And it was about just thinking about how you receive things. I can't remember exactly what it was called because she did the reading. But in answering the questions, we were all so excited to realize that we were instantly changing our perceptions of what you were asking us to think about and how we responded in terms of, that's what it was. It was high sensitivities and lower sensitivities. Yes, and it was just so much fun. And just by merely going through the process of answering the questions, we were already instantly experiencing a transformational process. Right.
Yeah, it is interesting to, and that's actually one of the things I'm really fascinated with right now is as the new perception comes in and takes hold, or as you become transparent, like I'm talking about in my newest book, ordinary things that you think you know about, like marriage or politics or education or, regular stuff that we think we understand it from old perception. And when you get into new perception, it totally shifts.
I'm covering goosebumps.
I'm thinking, I think I had a piece here. Let me see. Where did I put that? Here it is. In Transparency, I go through like 20 some of these things about how these things might change. I'll just read you about learning and memory. When you're transparent, learning is remembering. Knowing is direct experience. Revelations and insights are brought to you by the soul and the collective consciousness at just the right moment as a function of need. Curiosity is also a function of need. Your attention goes where you and we need it to go. All knowledge exists at once, and your attention to it allows it to become conscious. When you're finished using the knowledge, it goes back into the field until the next time you need it. Memorizing with willpower is replaced by merging with the information and allowing it to pass pattern your energy body and physical body until it emerges in your left brain as a description and definition. So education is deeply intimate. Memory spreads out so that what was personal and individual becomes impersonal and collective, and vice versa. You realize you don't own memories, but share them with all beings. So, I mean, I've got 25 of these things in this book here. And it's just so interesting to imagine how things get reinvented in the new perception, because, the soul's perception is all part of this unified field of mutual support, and there is no fear there. Souls don't have fear. That's part of this world, and so souls also don't understand healing because they don't need to be healed. It's the body and the energy bodies that hold contractions from fear, but the soul doesn't. So when you are the soul, you start to get a lot of the soul's understanding of how life works, and that I think is a lot about how we start changing the world here, is that if we're all being souls, then the physical world will start operating like the spiritual world.
Yes, and all of a sudden Stephen Hawking comes to mind because he just made such a profound impact on the perception of what and who we are and how we think and what we have to share and offer the world. Just amazing. And I mean, so many more. Mm-hmm. It's such a beautiful, peaceful way to exist and exciting and, again, fun. We can have fun.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. The more this integration happens and it creates transparency and the soul comes through, it really becomes so smooth and effortless, and there's a lot of freedom. There's not that trudging, I call it the opaque reality now, like the old one that's so slow and thick and difficult, and you have to put in your dues. And it doesn't mean you don't practice and you don't become good at things in time and space. You're not instantly good. We still have bodies. We still have, I think about Japanese calligraphers, who practice the brushes and they practice constantly. Even if they're really good, they don't stop thinking, I got it. No, it keeps on evolving. And the doing of it is the evolution of it, And so that's, I think, the way things work. We're playing in the physical plane to bring through the elegance of the non-physical world.
And there comes your beautiful refinement, Peggy. It's just, and the more you practice, the more fluid the refinement in the present moment. Mm-hmm. I hear that in your speech and your writing, and it's just inspiring. Because,
Thank you.
Yes, well, you're welcome. The physical plane can really bog you down. And it's interesting that our media now is covering a lot of hoarding and cluttering. Decluttering is in trend. And that's, I think, the physical manifestation that we talk about, that's in the collective. And we're all getting ready to become more transparent and not carry the burden.
Right. Because it's starting to really feel like a burden. And people are, it's like this urge for, I call it horizontal transparency in the physical world about information. We're starting to get to a point where we just hate lies. We can see through it. We can't stand it. We don't want it. We just want the real thing and don't water it down. And, and that's all that Wikipedia. I'm not Wikipedia, but the, who's the guy that's giving out all the secrets, that kind of thing. Where,
yes. No, I know.
Yeah, Snowden and all of that. That's going to just become more and more so. And of course, having an administration in politics now that is so secretive and so full of lies and so the opposite extreme, now we can see it more, and so I think transparency, I hear it in the news every day. It's a word that everybody seems to be using in their copy, and all the privacy statements now have been updated to be in some kind of new alignment with some new standards. And I bet I got 20 emails today from our privacy has been updated to be transparent.
Right. So as a collective, we are asking one another to hold ourselves accountable for our transparency so that we can all evolve.
Yes.
And and it's beautiful. It really is, as hard as it is for the struggle, because I also just want to acknowledge the amount of suffering for those who are either ready to cross the bridge or are afraid to cross the bridge or are stuck on the bridge and they know or think there's a troll under the bridge. All the things about the bridge.
Exactly. Yeah. There's there's this exercise I do with people where I have them stand in a doorway, standing in a doorway, and they look back at the reality they've been in, the old, slow, sticky, codependent, whatever kind of reality, and then turn around and look at the new reality where everything's just really smooth and instantaneous and no blockages and all that. And lean out toward the old reality and feel themselves in that, and then go back to neutral, then lean toward the new one, feel themselves become like that, and then go ahead and step through. And there's a hesitation often in a lot of people to do that because they're going to be leaving other people behind.
I was just thinking about the grieving process.
And they think they're going to be leaving people behind. But then I have them turn around and look back at the door, and it's gone. Once you get into the new reality, there's no separation from anybody anymore. The whole idea that you can't leave anybody behind. Where would they go? There's no outside world. It's all one big reality, and we're all interconnected. At that point, that sense of freedom becomes your main reality, and now it conveys almost telepathically or kinesthetically to all the people who you were seeing back there, and that it just heightens the, it's communion maybe. A lot of healing, I think, really comes through this state of communion with the truth.
It's beautiful. When you were giving the image of that, looking back with the door gone, I imagined myself turning around because where did they go? And I saw like a big surprise party. They're all there when you turn around, so you can relieve yourself of worry and grief and fear. Great exercise. I love that.
Yeah. It's very tactile. And I think we need sort of tactile experiences in our visualizations in order to get it in the body, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's what you need when you're doing that. And then the word woo-woo will hopefully soon leave the vocabulary. That's so funny. Well, Penny, we are running into the, sort of the last part of this segment, I think, on the linear plane of this conversation. I was hoping that you could maybe say what you would love to share with our listeners about exploring your work and going into the transparency, and which books do you want to maybe leave us with to note whatever you have on your mind.
The four major ones are The Intuitive Way, which is a course on intuition development, which is still selling a lot around the world. Then Frequency comes next, and that's where we talk about the fact that we're actually made of consciousness and energy and how to work with the energy dynamics of things. And then Leap of Perception, which is like, how is the brain changing? How is our actual perception shifting right now? And what are the new skills we need to learn to move out of the information age into the intuition age? And then Transparency is very much about this merger of the world. So the soul is in the body and personality. Spirit is inside matter. There's no heaven out there. It's all here now. And then that's how the world transforms when you are transparent, and how you can see through things and they can see through you, and you can be exposed and you don't have to hide or tell lies and all of that. And then again, how reality is going to shift in a transparent reality. How is it different from being in the opaque reality? So that's a process of reading those four books that explains a huge, huge amount of stuff. But then Be the Dreamer, Not the Dream is in ebook format, and it's the same kind of book, but applied toward every aspect of dreaming, and I think that's an important skill to have, not only to remember your dreams, but also to work with the symbols you receive during the day, your waking dreams, your daily noticings, because everything can kind of be interpreted to see what's the process you're working on underneath. What's my soul, me, trying to tell my personality by seeing these things, right? So I think we need to learn that skill of interpreting, sensory information and even verbal messages into experiential states. We've got to weave the worlds together. So I would say those, and there's a lot of fun stuff on my website. Like you said, there's oracle buttons and lots of, I usually write an oracle letter every year, a wisdom letter. So those are all there in PDFs and stuff.
I absolutely love the website. It's actually dangerous to go on it in the morning because then I don't want to leave. There's always something fresh and invigorating that my soul feels. And then on just all levels, there's something there for everyone. And it changes. That's another thing I love about it, because you can get stale on the website if you can't get the energy into it the way you want it to flow. And I hail again you for mastering that one, and your lovely assistant who connected.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm looking so much forward to continuing this conversation. And
it'll be fun. Yeah.
I just want to thank you again for joining us on greeninkradio.com.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your energy and time with me. Be sure to check out our blogs and other great shows on greeninkradio.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. This is Energy Amplified. I'm Marlisa McLaughlin on greeninkradio.com. Wishing you hope, health, and joy.